Hi everyone, William here with the Grand Duke Dmitri YouTube series. We are doing a letter from 1908, from May 1908. I have a bit of discrepancy that I have to point out. I talked about it before. Dmitri's dating of the letter was a little hard to make out, but he originally wrote 4th April and then crossed it out, and then he wrote May. And so I consulted AI to see when there was this event that he describes of a member of the Spanish royal family coming to Russia and bringing a tunic for Nicholas. And AI told me 11th May. Well, Dmitri is writing 4th May, and then later in the diary, which I hadn't noticed before, he actually puts the date of 5th May. So something is off, because that a 7-day difference would not be consistent with the difference between the two calendars, the Julian and the Gregorian calendar. So I don't know what to say about that. Anyway, Dmitri's dates are the 4th and the 5th of May. And in the previous part of the letter, he mentions that he will be leaving on the 17th to go to Paris to visit his father and visit Maria and do some traveling for the summer. So we have those dates from him, 4th and 5th May, so it'll be a little over 10 days before he'll be leaving. Yesterday he described, well, not yesterday, but in the video I did last time, which wasn't yesterday, it was 2 days ago, he describes tea at, as he puts it, in quotes, at Uncle Nicky's with Minnie, Misha, Olga, and Petya, so the Dowager Empress, Grand Duke Mikhail, Grand Duchess Olga, the Tsar's sister, and her husband. And he doesn't say anything about anybody else. But so I'm trying to puzzle this out, because as you know by now, if you've been following these videos for a while, Dmitri had sort of a vague sense of time, and he kind of jumps around in time, both in his diaries and in his letters. He'll be writing about one thing and then jump to something that happened the day before or the day after, and not necessarily place it, contextualize it in a way that would be helpful. So anyway, we can talk about that on the other side. And yeah, let's go ahead with the text for today. I forgot to describe what I did today. I lounged in bed all morning, then finally got up, drank coffee, and was late for church, after which blank was served for blank. All of us, and also Princess Golitsina and blank Obolenskaya. Okay, I need to start this over. So, with his handwriting and with the fact that he sometimes squeezes things into margins, I can't tell if he's talking about dinner or the liturgy at church. So dinner is abed and liturgy is abednya. So liturgy is referred to as a kind of dinner. Now, Dmitri doesn't usually use the word obed, dinner, for what we would call lunch. He uses it for the evening meal, and for him, lunch is zavtrak. So for him to say that there was a dinner after church, and then later go on to describe, tea and that sort of thing, that's a little unusual. That's not his word for lunch. So it makes me think that he's talking about liturgy, and maybe it's not a Sunday, maybe it is a liturgy for a saint's feast day or something like that. And to make things worse, we have these two blanks. So yeah, so he lounges in bed all morning, finally gets up, drinks coffee, is late for church, after which liturgy was served, let us say. It could be dinner was served for blank. So it was either a dinner or a liturgy in honor of someone. And then there's this other blank, all of us. So we have a missing verb, all of us, also Princess Golitsina and Obolenskaya. So these two women from very, very prominent aristocratic families in Russia, people who were at court, people who knew the imperial family, the Golitsins and Obolenskys, were involved in this, whatever it was. Okay, let's go on to the next paragraph. After dinner / liturgy, there was a little circle, after which we proceeded to the Alexander Palace. There we had tea with Aunt Alex. There were only 5 of us, and it was a lot of fun. I was terribly mischievous. God knows what kind of nonsense I got up to. Their Majesties deigned to laugh a little. I was scared to be alone without you during the procession. It was absolutely dreadful. And even now I keep imagining that you are sick or unwell and that you're right there in your room. For instance, when I go out to lunch or dinner and then return, I always have the urge to go to you. This morning, as I said, I was measured from my civilian clothes, but thank God it was nice that blank to measure, and that is an unpleasant occupation. So the blanks are really wreaking havoc with this. Anyway, let's return to what's going on. So Dmitri uses we throughout this letter, and I don't know who he means by we. If he means that Ella is there as well, that Ella has come with him from Moscow. I tend to think that, but I'm not sure because he doesn't explain the we. It's odd if Ella was there that he would be allowed to, lie around in bed and then be late for church, because Ella was strict. He didn't usually get away with those things with her. She had, when she was in charge, there was a bedtime, there was, a getting up time. But anyway, she may still have been with him. So drinking coffee before a liturgy means that he wasn't receiving the Eucharist. And in the Russian tradition, unlike the Greek, you very seldom receive the Eucharist. And when you do, there's a period of preparation before it. So it's not surprising that he would go to a liturgy and not receive the Eucharist. If he had been, he would have had to fast that morning. He wouldn't have been able to have coffee or anything else. Now, when he describes this circle, this little circle, after liturgy, there was a little circle. He's not using a Russian word there, and so I'm not exactly sure what he means when he uses the word circle. What the heck? And then he talks about a procession to the Alexander Palace, not just that we're going to the Alexander Palace, but that there's a procession. So I don't know what's going on. This is some kind of formal occasion. Which he doesn't explain. Then there's this tea, and the question is it the same tea that he referred to earlier in the diary when he described that tea? Let's see, what did he say? I just now returned from tea at Uncle Nicky's. Aunt Minnie was there, and Misha and Olga and Petya. So how many people is that? Uncle Nicky, Minnie, Misha, Olga, and Petya. That's 5 people. And he says in this instance, there were only 5 of us. We had tea with Aunt Alex. There were only 5 of us. So if we add Dmitri himself and Aunt Alex, that makes 7 people. So again, I'm not sure. Dmitri he's always throughout consistently vague about both numbers and time. So make of that what you will. And he plays the clown, as he so much loved to do. Their Majesties deigned to laugh a little. Well, we know Nicholas II appreciated his sense of humor and his playfulness. That's clear from other sources. But the question is, did Alexandra, did the other people there, Dmitri did this to endear himself to people, to play the clown, to get attention, so that people would enjoy his company. But he may not have had a lot of insight as to whether it annoyed people or not. He always reports it then in his diary or in his letters and says, I did this, I made people laugh. But, you know, what we don't know is whether people really appreciated that or not, whether it worked as a strategy to endear himself to people. So this is rather sweet in the next paragraph, that he says he's scared to be alone in the procession without Maria. Presumably, when there was a formal impression of the imperial family going into a dinner or going out onto the balcony to greet the people or something like that, he would have been paired with his sister. And he will be telling us later in this letter who he was paired with for the dinner in honor of this Spanish royal. But apparently, yeah, it was kind of scary. You know, he and Maria had been pretty much isolated from the court, so these things were new to him. And yeah, it would be more reassuring to go with your sister, I guess, than to be paired with another lady, young lady. Okay, what else? What else? Yeah, you know, it also shows how close the siblings were. That for him, it's hard to get used to his sister not being there. He goes and has dinner, he goes and has lunch, and he thinks, you know, in the back of his head, oh, Maria's just sick, and when I come back, I'm going to go visit her. Civilian clothes we've already heard about. He'd been wearing uniforms. He went straight from sailor suits to uniforms. He could not wear uniforms when he was abroad, so he had to be measured for civilian clothes, and I'm sure he says this is an unpleasant occupation. I'm sure, you know, the few times I've been measured for clothes, it's, you know, it's not terrible, but it's not anything that's particularly fun. So what do we have next time? Well, you know, we have the dinner. We have this big dinner for this Spanish royal person, and it's fantastic. He gives a great description of everything. So I hope to see you then. Bye.